In this lesson, we're going to talk about megacities in greater depth. We're picking up on the IGCSE spec 6.1, looking about the rates of urbanization and the emergence of megacities. So the definition we've got of megacities, we've talked about already in class, is that it is a city with a population of over 10 million. And as we've seen from this graph in the last 10, 15 years, there's been major growth in megacities on a worldwide scale, especially in Asia. But we just need to note that there is obviously varying degrees of growth. So some places like Beijing have increased by 44%, but some of the older, more established megacities are growing by a smaller rate. And we're going to look at some of the factors that might have caused those rates of growth. So why are megacities growing bigger than maybe other cities? There are four main reasons we need to know: economic development, population growth, economies of scale, and the multiplier effect. So economic development is quite an easy one to understand. Megacities are simply the core of a lot of these economies. They are really productive regions. They are really important in terms of industry and services, but they can also be important hubs in relation to other places. So they can be important kind of trade points in connection with other places. An example I put here is London and Tokyo and New York. They're all really key centres in terms of finance, and therefore lots of money is coming in and out of them. So we can see that they are the kind of the heart of kind of industry and kind of wealth in a country, but also in a region. And when we get economic growth in an area, that can drive the industry on further, which when we get a booming economy, that attracts more money and more people. Here's just an example to show, we saw that China had a lot of growth in terms of megacities, and I've just circled Hong Kong and Shenzhen here. This shows how Chinese cities compare in terms of GDP compared with countries of the world. So these two places are as big in terms of the economy as Norway and Sweden, which are pretty established and developed countries. That shows you how economically important some megacities can be on a world scale. Population growth we talked about when we talked about how cities grow and urbanize, and so similar reasons. Rural to urban migration is really important, and natural increase. These young migrants who are of childbearing age, having children, as healthcare improves, the death rate goes down, the birth rates are still high, and so we get population increase. Remember, these young migrants are also coming into these cities for opportunities. They're coming in attracted by the buzz of the city and the potential for opportunities. Opportunities aren't always actually there, but the idea of them is what drags them in, and this eventually leads to kind of population growth as the city expands. Just showing that in kind of how it actually works out on the megacities of the world, we can see that in this graph, in the next 15 years, most of the growth is going to be in developing and emerging countries, so megacities in those places, big places like Lagos, Karachi and Cairo right at the top with over 20%. And we can see there aren't very many developed countries because these countries have already grown, the megacities have already grown quite a lot, and so their growth is slowing down. In the case of Tokyo, it's actually declining. Another factor that's important to the growth of megacities is what we call economies of scale. So to understand this, we need to realise that if I am an industry and a service and I'm in a megacity, then I am normally closer to each other than I would be if I was in separate cities. This has certain financial savings because if I'm right next to where I get my goods from or where I get important services from, then my transport costs are hugely reduced. And this is what we call economies of scale, financial savings. It means you can grow your business much quicker because you are reducing some of your important outgoings. So being really close to each other in a city is why people would go to a megacity, and it's why it continues to grow because it's a very attractive feature. Also, being close to companies that are important, that might feed off each other, means that people and businesses can communicate, which means businesses can grow quicker. So there are lots of advantages to being close in the same city, and that's why megacities can be such attractive places. The last factor I'm really going to consider is the multiplier effect. This is the basic idea that once we have economic growth in a city, that this will gather momentum and it will lead to more and more growth. So success breeds success. So if I have this city here, just a normal city of a couple of million that has a booming economy, that will attract people in it, and it will attract investment from other places, which might lead to more jobs, more successful businesses. And as that happens, that means more people and more money and more buildings and more businesses happen. So this is the idea that once we have a little bit of success, it will snowball into more and more success. Just to kind of exemplify that, I've drawn this diagram just to say if I had economic growth, we would create some jobs, which drags people in from maybe the countryside in developing emerging countries, which then those people start to increase in terms of size, which when you get a growing population, you need goods and services to support and feed those people. And when I need goods and services, I need people to actually provide those goods and services, so that's more job, and then those people are paying money back into the economy, which leads to further and further growth. So this is the idea of the multiplier effect in practice. It shows you why megacities become such attractive places. The last thing to consider is that some of the growth of megacities actually can lead to problems. So we're going to explore the kind of wider problems of urbanisation later, but just to show here, we can see that London, in terms of how much wealth per capita is earned in the city, is hugely separate and different to the rest of the UK, even the southeast, which is a very productive region. It shows you that in some megacities, all the wealth and resources, all of the talented people can be concentrated in an area, which means that periphery areas sometimes lose out. And you see this stark contrast between the megacities and their surrounding areas. Similarly, in China, these economic zones on the east coast will draw in a lot of people, and they will draw in a lot of finance and resources, which means that the rural areas, so as far as places like Tibet, will be completely drained of all their resources and talented people, and so you get this kind of rural-urban divide, and so megacities can be a potential source of conflict within a country, and particularly when it comes to using people's talent and their resources.